This week on Head to Head, the return of Palpatine.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars. Begins now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this podcast. So this is interesting. I was actually reading through a lot of the articles that I get, in my email and everything. And one of them, of course, came from Fathom Events. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, Fathom basically sponsors all these re-releases of movies or like special things, like they'll do the Metropolitan, Met at the Opera or whatever.
Right.
They basically do like a lot of different special events that they release theatrically. And the latest email says that in May, starting May the 4th, which is ironic considering that's Star Wars national holiday, they're actually going to re-release Batman, the 1989 Batman with Michael Keaton in the theater.
Yes.
And then, of course, subsequently, it'll be the rest of them. Each, I think they're like 2 days apart or something. But knowing that Batman is your favorite superhero, I thought I would clue you in on that if you didn't already know.
I appreciate that immensely. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely hopeful I can get out to see those, especially Batman and then Batman Returns. After that, I really don't care.
Yeah, you don't really care. I mean, I would see the other ones just almost for nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean,
but yeah,
Forever I could stomach, but Batman and Robin,
I don't know. I don't know which one I hate more.
It's got to be Batman and Robin.
I mean, Batman and Robin was way over the top, but the thing is that Jim Carrey really irritated me as the Riddler. And even Tommy Lee Jones, who's normally, his portrayal of Two-Face was just so nauseating.
Yeah. It's not true to the actual character.
At all. And it's just like, it really spoils it for me.
Yeah. But like I said, Tim Burton hitting it out the park with Batman and Batman Forever.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Batman and Returns is... Yeah, like Danny DeVito as the Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. Oh my God! I mean,
well, that's what was weird to me about seeing Dumbo a couple weeks ago, is the fact that both Michael Keaton and Danny DeVito co-star in that movie.
Right.
So the whole time I'm watching it, and I'm like, "This is so cool, dude! It's like Batman and the Penguin together on screen, and they're kind of adversaries eventually." So, that was really kind of cool, and it was a Tim Burton movie. And Danny Elfman did the music.
Sweet.
Yeah, so it was,
wow,
totally like that. So I thought I would bring that up, And in case anybody out there, look, this is a national thing. This isn't just happening here in Michigan. I mean, you guys want to go out and see 1989 Batman? Go for it.
Yeah, I've always wanted to see it in the theater because I never saw it in the theater. The first time I saw it was on television.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, which one's the first one you saw?
Returns.
Oh, you did see Returns?
Yeah, Returns was like 92.
Yep.
So that was the first one I saw in the actual theater.
Oh, so you missed the 89 Batman. Yeah, man, I saw that like 4 times, I think.
Well, I remember I remember seeing the commercials for it on TV, and I was really excited to go. And it's amazing that I was so excited to see Batman at that age.
Yeah, I know. It's funny how that works.
Yeah. It's like he was already my favorite character, and I've already been on Earth like 5 years.
Well, it's like I've often said, I started collecting comics at like 6 or 7, and I did so up until I was about 15. And by the time I was like 11 or 12, I was almost like in the comic book dealing because I was heavily trading them by the time I was like 9.
So speaking of, DC, did you go see Shazam?
I did, and it was amazing. I love that movie. I dare say it's almost my favorite DC movie.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I loved Wonder Woman, loved Aquaman. Those 3 are like probably the 3 best if you're going objective. I did really enjoy Man of Steel. I really thought that was a great take on the whole Superman thing. Batman versus Superman actually had some really cool moments, but I do understand the weaknesses. And I would say that if you're not really a fan of Batman v Superman, go see the extended cut before you actually make up your mind. Because the theatrical cut was a mess for a lot of different behind-the-scenes reasons. Just like I was actually watching on YouTube the other day. I should link this in the show notes, but there was, how they'll always have, things you didn't know about this movie or that movie or whatever?
Right.
Well, there's this one guy, and I didn't research this, so I mean, this is just like off the top of my head. I wasn't even planning on bringing him up, actually. So usually if I do, when we do plan these things out, we actually will do the research and all that. But I didn't. This is just something I saw. And it was something like everything you didn't know about Superman 2 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they finally released the Richard Donner version of Superman 2.
Right.
Back in like around 2005 or something. But it was funny because I knew loosely the whole story behind all that, but I didn't really clue in on like a lot of the differences and stuff like that. And it was a really good, if you guys are like Superman fans, and in particular, you really liked Superman 2 and, basically all the Christopher Reeve ones, you should really check out this little, and it's only like 13 minutes or something. So it's definitely worth checking out. But yeah, I mean, Shazam was just an incredible movie. It was funny, but without being cheesy. It had really heavy, dramatic, and darker moments too.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just really well done and well acted.
Cool. I'm gonna have to go check that out then.
Well, before you check it out, let's go and stop at the Cantina first.
I'm gonna need a drink for this. All right,
Yeah,
awesome.
you might. You might. All right. Well, now that we're seated in the Cantina, we're all comfortable.
I have my favorite ale.
Yeah. So it looks like first we're going to talk a little bit more about the celebration.
Yeah, man. I just really wanted to commend the fans of Star Wars. Sometimes in Star Wars we can be kind of tough on people, because we really love the franchise, and we could be tough on directors. We can be tough on, each other.
Rian Johnson, right?
Exactly. We could be tough on each other. No, that's a stupid idea. Or, you even hear our buddy, Christian Harloff over on Jedi Council, when people write him sometimes like, oh, you're insane if you think that's going to happen. And, then things happen. Oh, well, then you must have this. But, so, I mean, everybody kind of gets it. And I'm sure we probably will at some point, too. But, oh, well.
Yeah, that's true. So far, we've been lucky. You guys have actually been really cool to us. But we appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. But I really would like to commend the fans, man, for just giving such a warm reception for Ahmed Best and Kelly Marie Tran at Celebration, because those two, as people, have just received like a lot of backlash.
Well, it's ironic you bring this up, because this is almost like now swinging the pendulum the other way, because if you remember, we did a whole podcast on this subject.
Yeah, we did.
Particularly with Kelly Marie Tran, where we basically blasted the Star Wars fandom for the way that they've acted and driving her off social media. And yeah, it was a travesty. So you're right. To actually see them now warmly embrace both of them. I mean, Ahmed Best was ready to kill himself at one point.
Exactly.
You know, and it's like, guys, it's not that serious.
Yeah, it's like he's only doing what George asked of him,
Yeah, you have to do what the director tells you to do.
Exactly. So, I mean, I'm just happy to see that, they got such a warm reception, and they genuinely looked happy to be there.
They did. And that's the thing. You know what? I was really surprised to see Kelly Marie Tran back out there. Yeah. I would not have been surprised if she had skipped Celebration.
True. And I'm actually even more surprised with Ahmed Best coming back.
You know what? The reason why I'm not is because him being blasted was 20 years ago. And since then, he's been somewhat under the radar, and, time heals all wounds. And people have been embracing him slowly, and the Jar Jar character, for a while. So it didn't really surprise me too much to see him get somewhat of a more warm reaction, only because people have been softening their stance on the prequels quite a bit over the last 3 or 4 years. But you got to remember that Kelly Marie Tran episode only happened like a year ago,
Exactly. It's
so,
still
that's
relatively
pretty
fresh. Yeah.
And to see her be brave enough to come back out, it's not so much that I would think that the fans would do anything. It's really more like, okay, you just got driven off of social media because it was so bad. And it just amazes me that she was actually willing to go back out there and you know, because she didn't know what she was going to get subjected to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, you
and
know.
like you said, she was happy to be there.
Yeah. And then that's the thing, you know, she seemed to be blushing and just like loving everybody's embrace of her, you know. And
it was great.
You know, it's like you have to remember, like, she's playing a character, you know, but there's still a real person attached to this. Exactly. So I was really happy to see that.
Yeah, that was cool. And hopefully, you know, that warmth continues.
Definitely.
And I'm hoping that the Rise of Skywalker actually gives us reason to celebrate and to love Star Wars unconditionally again.
Yeah, and hopefully I think she's going to have a bigger role in this too, and she's going to play a bigger, so everybody who may have doubted her character before may actually like, oh, okay. Well,
and don't forget, you know, I mean, John Boyega actually got a lot of crap too. You know, there's the whole, we can't have a black stormtrooper kind of a thing, and you know, you get all this like silliness and stuff.
He's a lead, and
yeah, right. And I mean that's softened up by The Last Jedi. Actually, a lot of people commended him. You know, they thought he was wasted, actually. So you do get a little bit of a, you know,
switch,
I guess of a little switch, yeah.
Yeah, so, and even speaking about, you know, The Last Jedi, the next thing is the Rian Johnson trilogy. Now, at Celebration, you know, we got to hear about episode 9, of course. We got to hear about the Mandalorian, and we know there's, you know, some other things that Disney has coming down the pipeline along with Lucasfilm concerning Star Wars. And one of the things that I even myself have to remember that Rian Johnson does have a whole nother trilogy that he's going to start. So
as does Benioff and Weiss.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they are talking.
They are talking to each other.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know, the thing I actually like overall, too, is it seems like, you know, when Kathleen Kennedy was talking about, oh, yeah, we're really like working with these guys and we're going to plan the next 10 years of movies or whatever. And it's like, I like the word plan.
Yes. Thank you.
I like that whole,
yes.
Finally, you guys caught on. It's like, you know, you don't even really have to take a hiatus if you just do that.
Right.
But listen, from us to you, take all the time you need to carefully, not just plan, carefully plan.
Right.
And make everything, you know, cool.
Yeah, and fit. Because, you know, after, and that's where I'm really going to be kind of curious to see what happens, because with, as far as we know, there aren't going to be any more saga films. And the saga films have kind of been a thread in most of the Star Wars.
They've definitely been the foundation.
Yeah, so it's kind of like with that being gone now, it's like, and now you have, however 9 ends is going to set up probably, I mean, of course, we're going to be time jumping, I'm guessing. So we might do something Old Republic 1 minute, and the next minute we're in this time period here, and we're in that time period there.
Well, and that's where I think they have to be careful, too, because if they do too much time jumping, the casual fans
are going to get lost.
They're going to get completely lost.
Yeah.
I mean, they're lost now anyway.
Right.
You know, I mean, half the people thought that Rogue One was a sequel to Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, it is going to be interesting, too, because we're pretty sure that the Benioff and Weiss trilogy is going to be set in the Old Republic. Mm-hmm. We don't know what Rian Johnson's got going.
Exactly. And that's what I'm really, because, and Ken Napzok on Jedi Council made a nice suggestion, which would be interesting, is that if they did, if Rian Johnson did like a trilogy of, you know, the formation of the Jedi, and then Benioff and Weiss did the formation of the Sith, and then they kind of merged into,
I remember that. Yeah, the couple movies in, and then, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that would be kind of cool, but, and I agree with Harloff too, is that you kind of have to make sure the tone is going to be the same.
And I don't know if they necessarily really want to
do that.
I mean, I think that they're collaborating to make sure that they're, you know, they're just on the same page maybe. But I would be surprised if Rian Johnson's trilogy actually took place anywhere near the Benioff and Weiss trilogy. Like, I personally think it's going to be, you know, unknown regions stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be cool. Especially, honestly, I would love to see how Rian Johnson, and I know some people are probably going to hate me. I know we just talked about Kelly Marie Tran and everything like that, but I think I would be interested to see what Rian Johnson does with Thrawn. Like if he did something with Thrawn.
Yeah, I mean, because, and a lot of people point this out that, well, it depends. I think if Rian Johnson's smart, he's not going to take any characters that we already know. He's going to do a whole new trilogy of brand new characters. Maybe if you put a familiar character, because that's the biggest problem people have with The Last Jedi. It's not that he was a bad filmmaker. It's just that he took the characters that everybody loved and in their mind, he screwed them up.
Mm-hmm.
And however brave he may have been, I think a lot of people, even the people that hated the movie, do applaud him for having the guts to do something different, but maybe it was too different.
Right.
And I think that what you got to remember is that in order for him to, I guess, get back in the good graces of Star Wars fans, he needs to take characters where we don't already know their backgrounds. So he's establishing that.
Right.
Because that's what everybody really didn't like. They didn't like what he did with Leia. They didn't like
what he did with Luke.
Yeah, with Luke especially.
Yeah, that was the big one.
There was a bunch of other stuff, the humor and stuff didn't feel like Star Wars, but that's because it didn't feel like what those characters would do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in a way, yeah, sure. He's taking some of JJ's newer characters and trying to stay somewhat within the context of and the parameters of those characters. But at the same time, if you have brand new ones, you could do anything you want. There's nothing to compare it to.
That's true.
So I mean, and the unknown regions would be the best way to do that. Because the problem is that any other time period except for the Old Republic, you almost have some establishing thing.
Right.
Like, let's just say you go, okay, this one takes place between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. And let's just say it takes place on the other side of the galaxy. Well, there's a part of you that's still going, yeah, but how does that relate to, what the Empire's doing and the rebellion and all that? It's almost like you still have to have some familiarity. You have to actually...
You have to put that thread through.
Yeah. So, I mean, you either have to go like way in the future or way in the past, or you have to go to an area that all the events of the saga films would have like nothing to do with it, and the unknown regions would fit that bill. Now, it's true, you could take Thrawn, because as long as you didn't do anything that made all the Thrawn fans angry, you would be okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, other than that, that was a good topic, because his is really that X factor. You really have no idea.
And you think they're keeping that? I mean, because it's funny that, like, we almost are talking more so about Benioff and Weiss, and is it because of Game of Thrones is being so relevant right now? Or is it that people just don't want to talk about Rian Johnson? You know what I mean? Like, the people don't want to think about him doing another Star Wars thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that's part of it. But I think that the other thing is that Benioff and Weiss are talking more about their movie. Rian Johnson's not really talking about his movies. Yeah,
I mean, even with Benioff, like they said, George Lucas visited the set of Game of Thrones,
Right.
And,
and I'm sure, they'd probably talked a little bit about what they had planned for Star Wars. And the other thing is it seems like their movie is being promoted a little bit more, which tells me it's going to happen sooner.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing we got to know, too. We don't know the next timeline of movies. We have no idea what they're planning on doing movie-wise.
Right.
Beyond Episode 9, we have no idea what's going on movie-wise.
Yeah.
So there's no release schedule. There's no...
Because the only thing, outside of The Mandalorian, that's on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
and that's the Cassian Andor series. That's going to be on Plus. But outside of that, we don't have a timeline as far as
none of the films.
Yeah,
and that's because they want to go back wisely and
plan the
stuff out. So we just have to see the results of that.
Yeah.
So but what about you guys? What do you guys think that Rian Johnson's cooking up over there in his little writing room?
Yeah, hopefully it's something good. I mean, he's gonna have to redeem himself, though.
Yeah, he really is, and that's the thing. It's like, because he's good.
Yeah,
You know, and I just hope that he proves that he's also good for Star Wars.
Yeah.
You know,
that's the thing. They handed him a trilogy.
I know.
It's like, it's not even like a movie. Like, you gave him a whole trilogy.
Yeah. And you gave him, and you kept, because they gave it to him before The Last Jedi came out.
Yeah.
But they let him keep doing it.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, look, we all know that Kathleen Kennedy is not, she's no stranger to just canning people. Geez, she canned Lord and Miller like 80% into the film.
Yep, Colin Trevorrow.
Yeah, Trevorrow, I mean, he didn't even get a start time, but he sure did a lot of pre-production work on it.
Yeah.
So you know, if like they had any issues with the whole Last Jedi thing, they would have been like, oh yeah, you remember that trilogy? That's not going to happen.
And they were really excited for it. They loved it. You know, they were like, so.
So you got to wonder what it is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like if they start with 3 movies, if they give them 3 movies, and let's say the first one bombs.
I know.
You know, it's like, okay, do you bring in another director or do you.
Well, and it could be that he might. You know, he might do a Lucas anyway. He might want to direct the first one, but then he'll just write them and produce them and hand them off.
That's true.
You know, which would definitely be the case if this one flopped.
Right.
But now we're going from Rian Johnson back to our old friend JJ Abrams.
Yeah. Good old JJ. So I just wanted to know your opinion on what do you think JJ's vision for the Rise of Skywalker is going to be?
To be better than The Last Jedi.
You know what,
that might be the...
You know what? It's funny, though, because I love how clever they were on the panel, going back to Celebration a little bit, because JJ was kind of like not trying to...
Think he was throwing a little shade at The Last Jedi?
He was trying not to. I think that's the thing. I think he was trying not to throw shade at The Last Jedi. I think he was more so just like, well, we're going to go do this. You know, that political stance that you have to take. But, you know, like behind the scenes, they're probably like, oh, my God, why did you let him do that?
Well, but you got to remember, though, but
JJ was around, though. He was executive
producer. I mean, it wasn't like he didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah. And you just kind of have to wonder even about that. Like, you know, why did they let him do this? You know?
I was going to make this joke, but then I realized that it would definitely be taken the wrong way. I was going to say that, you know, Rian Johnson needed to prove himself. He kind of needs his own The Rise of Johnson, but, you know, you just...
Yeah.
Doesn't really...
That's one of those Lord and Miller movies.
Yeah, right.
Oh, man.
But, yeah, I mean, I think that I don't necessarily think that JJ's looking to repair anything from 8 or, you know, certainly retconning or anything like that. I think what he's just going to do is he's going to continue that story, but in his own way, in the way that perhaps he envisioned it. Because remember, he wasn't supposed to do 9.
Right. I mean, I think he's going to fix some things. I don't, not necessarily retcon, but fix it. Like, okay, make it make sense.
Yeah, because retcon would be like as if it didn't happen.
Right. But like, you just basically, okay, here's what happened.
Well, the raised parents thing.
Right. That's the big one.
He could easily go, okay, Kylo was lying to her.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that would fit like your description of
exactly.
He's going to fix it.
Exactly.
Like, I'm not really nuts about the fact that they're just junk dealers. I want her to be related to somebody, so just kidding.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
And they could do that, and that would be within the character. That's the only thing that I would say is that if you're going to... But then again, it's kind of like, especially when you look at the trailer, it doesn't seem like they really had to fix much. Just let's carry on and do the story, you know? It's like, okay, this is where they are. This is what happened. This is what set up. Take what's there and now give us a really good story. I do admit, though, that I would like to see... I've always been that proponent of Rey being related to Palpatine.
Yeah.
But the more I think about that, the more I want that to happen.
Yeah. I mean... But here's the thing. It's kind of like, on one hand, like, I don't want any of our theories. In some ways, I don't want any of our theories to be right.
I want them to be right. I just don't want them to be the way that... Because, look, I could say, okay, I want Rey related to Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a theory. Well, I don't know how that is. I don't know how that works.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, it's like, okay, we see it in the movie. It's like, I was right. Or, like, I don't want to. It's almost kind of like if I figure it out before it happens, it kind of, for me, it kind of takes away from me because it's like, I still want to be surprised by something. Now, I did have this thought, though, for, the Rise of Skywalker. And at least in the title. Of course, we all are going to speculate, what that means. Like, is that Kylo? Is that, is he getting redeemed? Or is he, it could be anything. Mm-hmm. But I had a thought. So, Rey, she always says she's a nobody from nowhere. So that's what she told Luke. And he's like, well, no one's from nowhere. And then she's like, I'm from Jakku. And he's like, oh, yes. You're from nowhere, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, that was actually one of the funniest moments of The Last Jedi, actually. It's like, well, all right, yeah. It's true.
But seeing as that, like, okay, Leia and Han lost Kylo to the dark side, and Luke is gone. So Rey basically has no family. And even throughout the movies, she's been looking for someone to fill that role for her, whether it was Han at first.
Yeah.
And then she tried to find it in Luke. Kylo brought that out to her. Like, okay, you tried to find it in these two guys for somebody to be your parent or whatever, but they couldn't be it for you. But
like, it's because you keep killing them.
But what if Leia actually decides to pass on the name of Skywalker to her because she has that light that that she
that kind of Skywalker nobility,
that she's like, what, you could have been one of us. And since Rey doesn't have anything
not
attached
a
to
Skywalker until she gets her hand lobbed off, or until she screws up the universe in some crazy way, then she can be a Skywalker.
Right, you got to fail majorly.
You got to do something dumb or lose a hand. It's up to you.
So I think that would be cool. And that could be like the Rise of Skywalker because she's rising up with the Skywalker name.
Yeah, and I mean, I briefly thought of that myself because
everything's been about passing down the torch,
Yeah. But, that's the thing. It's like I think that's one of the things that's really cool about this whole thing is that it's almost like this information, but that you can't box it in.
True. Very true.
It's like it's not that it brings up more questions. It just makes the questions that it does bring up deeper because it could be a number of things. And I think that that's what makes this whole thing so exciting is that with this trailer, we actually got enough information for some really not just wild speculation, but good speculation.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's enough to make you really excited about the possibilities of what could happen. And that's why I think that that's what JJ wanted to do. I think if I had to tie him to one vision, it would be to tie the saga together. Yeah. Not just this trilogy, but the entire saga of 9 movies.
Right.
I think that that's what his vision is. Now, how he realizes that, we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I love, even when in an interview, he said, you'll definitely understand, like, when you see the movie.
Yeah, and that really understand. Got me pretty jazzed up, yeah. And it's nice to know that, okay, there's a question that will be definitively answered. And that's, my personal hope for the movie, besides just give me a good story, would be, I don't want any questions.
Right.
At the end of this thing.
Well, it can't be at this point.
Well, I mean, I don't mind the questions that you would normally have. Like, well, I wonder what these guys... Like, look, Return of the Jedi. Perfect example, right?
Like, what did Luke do after that or something?
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, you can wonder maybe what happened to everybody afterwards, but it tied up the trilogy. You didn't have any lingering, like, I wonder if Darth Vader really is Luke's father. Or I wonder... you just wondered naturally what's next for everybody. It wasn't like you had questions that...
Luke go back to selling land speeders back on Tatooine now.
Yeah. And then, of course, the Timothy Zahn trilogy of novels, gave us, well, the whole, I mean, basically opened everything back up again. But,
Right.
and that's why I think everybody drifted toward those novels, because everybody really did want to know what's next. But I don't mind having that kind of question, because
Yeah, that's fine.
at the end of any movie, you're going to always wonder, well, I wonder what happened after these. Geez, at the end of Purple Rain, I wondered what was happening with everybody. Graffiti Bridge gave me somewhat of an example of kind of a weird supernatural version of what happened. But, the point is, any good movie where you're invested in the characters, you're going to wonder what the next journey is for these people.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
I just don't want any, well, who is Rey's parents? Or where did Snoke come from? Or, I want all that stuff answered.
Yeah, we need to know about Snoke. What happened? Where did he come from? Why did he do what he did?
Yeah, what was Palpatine's role in all this stuff? And, I mean, we just need to know, like, okay, what's been happening? Because that's been the weird thing about this whole trilogy, is the fact that each subsequent movie brings up more questions than answers.
Mm-hmm.
And you're enjoying the movies, but at the same time, you're just like, I'm not grasping where this is going.
Yeah, it's like they're leading you to a place that, you can't follow.
Yeah, right. And eventually, you have to. Now, granted, I get it. I mean, in the prequels, the nice thing about them was you knew where it had to go.
Yeah, exactly.
You just didn't know how it was going to get there.
Absolutely.
And I mean, but the original trilogy, even, you basically knew, okay, it's the Empire versus a rebellion. At some point, one of these two sides have to win. Luke is trying to go on a journey to become a Jedi. He finds out that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker, his dad. And, it's like, even though it introduced questions,
it has some twists.
There was a linear plot, I guess, to the whole thing.
Right.
In this sequel trilogy, there's no linear plot, really.
No, not at all. I mean, you knew, like, okay, you had this galactic empire that's really trying to dominate the galaxy. And, you have this band of people that are trying to stop it. But, okay, now you have the First Order who's kind of trying to do the same thing. But then you kill who you think is the ultimate bad guy in Snoke. So then now Kylos is left around. See, on like Return of the Jedi, Vader and Palpatine were gone. So it's like,
but
okay.
Go back even before that, though, right? So now you go back to Star Wars, like A New Hope. Okay. Yes, you're in the middle of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So at first you're kind of like, oh, this Empire, where'd they come from? Well, you find out that there was an old Republic. It's almost like all the things that you need to know. First Order, you have no idea where these guys came from, unless you start reading some of the new canon novels, which does shed a little bit of light. But as a moviegoer, you have no idea where these guys, well, how do they relate to the Empire? Who started this? Like, you have no idea.
Yeah.
The Snoke guy, it's like, okay, well, is he the new Emperor? Is he, what is he?
Yeah, how did he all of a sudden get control of everybody?
And how did he get control of everything? You have no idea. That's what I'm saying. There's no context for a lot of the things that are happening. Han Solo went back to being a smuggler. Well, why?
Mm-hmm.
When did that happen?
Yeah.
He lost the Falcon. How? When did that happen? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like there's all these different things. Okay, we're looking at Rey. Why are we concentrating on her? If you go back to A New Hope, even though you're in the middle of the story, you understand why you're focusing on these people pretty much right away. Because first of all, what George Lucas did so brilliantly was the first characters you really focus on are the droids.
Yeah.
And you're kind of following them and meeting the people on the way. It's almost like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Dorothy gets lost, and then she meets a scarecrow, and then they go, and then they meet the Tin Man. And it's like,
yep.
It's basically Dorothy, you're following her journey, and then you're just adding these people along the way. And that's what happened with C-3PO and R2-D2. Okay, they had to jettison from the escape pod. Well, then they meet, Luke, and then now they're with Obi-Wan, and they, you know what I mean? And it's like, then they have to go and get on the ship, and they meet Han Solo, and then they all end up on this adventure. But with The Force Awakens, you have all these characters. It's like, well, why are we focused on Rey? There's no context, really.
Right.
It's like about the only person that has that somewhat of a context is Finn.
Yep.
Finn's the only one.
Yep.
So I mean, and it's other than some of the, even with the familiar characters, it's like, well, you don't know why.
Yeah.
Why did Han Solo go back to smuggling? I mean, you do get a little bit of a loose answer, but, and then...
Once he lost Kylo, but then it's like, okay, well, how did Kylo...
Right.
I mean, you get that answered at least in Return.
You get that answer in Last Jedi, but it's sort of like, well, okay, but what pushed Luke that far over the edge where he couldn't control his own emotions? You know what I mean? It's like there's no linear storyline there.
Yeah.
Where did the First Order come from? You don't...
How does Snoke even get in contact with Kylo?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how did he become an influence when you got
Luke Skywalker,
Grand Master Jedi?
Yeah,
and the heroes of the rebellion,
and it's his nephew, so you think you will be able to kind of feel him being closer. You know, it's like
then this like scary, scarred up old dude,
Freddy Krueger, basically comes out, and
it's like, well, why would you listen to this guy? And you go, oh, well, you probably seduced him with this dark side stuff. It's like, okay, great. Well, how? You know, I mean, that's, I think, if there's a weakness in the sequel trilogy, that's it. There's no context. Right. And I think that that's what gets people a little crazy. So with JJ, he has to give 7 and 8 the context that it needed in order to even really move forward.
Right.
And that's what I'm hoping that his vision for the Rise of Skywalker is, to tie up the whole saga, which would give it the context.
Definitely. Great.
All right. So, you know what our next segment is? Mostly because you're the one that always introduces it.
Yes, sir. Next segment is Duel of the Fates. All right. So, this week for Duel of the Fates, we have The Mandalorian versus The Rise of Skywalker. Which project must succeed?
Yeah, that's kind of a tough question to answer, and here's why.
I wonder if it's for the same reason that I'm thinking.
Well, because The Rise of Skywalker must succeed in order to give Star Wars its credibility that it once had, and the future of its film franchise, which you could argue is the crux of Star Wars. I mean, as much as the television, which has been dominated up until this point by the animated series that have come out, I mean, the films is really where Star Wars lives.
True.
If The Rise of Skywalker fails right after Solo is a box office disappointment, and The Last Jedi, while a box office success, hopelessly divided fans, you have to reunite. It has to reunite the Star Wars fandom. On the other hand, The Mandalorian is the flagship live TV show. So if it fails, one, it will also put a slight dent, because it's showing that Star Wars can only live as animated television series and movies and books and things like that. And it could slightly put a chink in the armor, no pun intended, with The Mandalorian, but of the whole Disney Plus streaming service. They're banking on this.
Well, and you hit most of the nails on the head for me. I'll also add to that is with The Mandalorian, yes, it being the first of its kind in the sense of being live action Star Wars on TV or in the series type of form, but it's one of those things where, this is where they're trying to move the franchise to, almost. And if you don't do it right, it's Star Wars has already had a couple of missteps already. Like you said, with Last Jedi. And
if you really want to be honest, the answer is probably both of them.
I mean, yes, that's the true answer. But I think out of all of it, I think Rise of Skywalker has to succeed more so than the Mandalorian.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to say too, because if the Mandalorian fails, first of all, Star Wars has successes in television. With Clone Wars, with Rebels, Resistance. If the Mandalorian fails, they got Cassian Andor to back it up. If that even fails, they can go back to animated series. It won't affect things that much. There's a lot of the casual Star Wars fans that don't even watch these things. The Rise of Skywalker, on the other hand, that's the big one.
Yeah.
Because that's the one that's going to be more, because you can't spit out films. I mean, TV series are, they're big productions too, but it's like films require a lot of lead time for promotion and marketing, and there's just more at stake. They cost more. And yeah, you already have 2 movies now that have put a little bit of a dent for different reasons.
Right.
In what was once an infallible franchise.
Right.
I mean, sure, the prequels, but the prequels were mostly like fans just fighting amongst themselves about, what Star Wars should be. I mean, they were box office successes for the most part, the age group. Because, the prequels were the first set of movies that came out for a different generation. Right. Up until then, Star Wars was made for the generation that first experienced it, my generation. But the prequels were the first ones and that's why I think the prequels are getting a lot of love, is because those people that, saw it at like, 6, 7, 8, 10 years old are now 25, 30, 35. Now, that was their Star Wars. This set of movies will be the next generation Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, I really think Episode 9 has to ring true because it's the finale. It's like
that's another one too. It's the finale.
It's like Game 7, man.
Yeah.
Like you gotta close it out. You have to close it out. I mean, it's the Super Bowl. You got it.
Otherwise, it'd be like, well, just kidding. Episode 10's really the last movie, and now we're gonna tie that up.
Right.
I mean, yeah, absolutely right. You're tying together. It's like this movie is the one that basically bookends the entire 9-movie saga.
Yeah.
And it has to be done right.
Yeah, it has to. Yeah, it has to rock.
The good news, though, is that I think that both movies are going to knock it out of the park. I think the Mandalorian TV series is going to be amazing, and I think that, I don't know, I get the feeling that the Rise of Skywalker is just going to be an incredible movie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost should be called like the Rise of Star Wars, because it almost has to kind of like rise up from ashes anyway.
Yeah.
And, it's like I said with the Mandalorian, yeah, it's the flagship product, but like you mentioned before, you still got Marvel and stuff that you have on Disney Plus. So there's other things that it won't hurt the streaming of Disney Plus, but the Star Wars franchise, though, it could hurt. And the thing is that you don't want to get fans in the position where it's like, all right, you don't know what to trust. Like Star Wars has always kind of been that thing that you could always trust is going to be good.
Yeah.
And then, so now when you have like, okay, the landmine of The Last Jedi and then the landmine of Han Solo and, or Solo. And now you got fans kind of wavering, even with the comments, like people's like, well, okay, I don't know. I mean, the trailer looks good, but The Last Jedi trailer looks good too, and we know we got this. So now you kind of have people skeptical. People are a little bit more gun shy, no pun intended.
But see, this is what happens though. So when everybody was doing the Dance of Joy in 2012, when Disney bought, Lucasfilm, and everybody's like, finally, we can get a bunch of different directors and different writers and people putting their spin on Star Wars and expand things a little bit. And that's true. But see, what everybody forgets is that the caveat to that is the fact that you no longer have the one mind behind it, so you don't have that kind. See, everybody can bank on the whole Star Wars quality thing because Lucas was the one overseeing the ship personally in every case.
Mm-hmm.
So you knew there might be an idea that you didn't like, but you knew that the movies were going to hit certain beats and certain things because they were coming from one mind.
It was coming from the creator.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, in the case of the prequels, he did direct every one of them. But I mean, even in the original trilogy, when he handed it off, he was still overseeing the whole thing. So everything had to go through him. Even, novels and stuff like that, video games and all that, he had to approve all this stuff. And the novelists at the time for the old expanded universe, Legends, were constantly saying, yeah, they wanted to do this. Well, you can do that, but you can't do this. And no, you can't do this with Yoda. But yes, you can do this with Obi-Wan and stuff like that.
Right.
And the problem is that while it's nice that we get different ideas and we get different takes, and that is going to expand the tone, people just have to understand that there's going to be a danger that there's just going to be a bad Star Wars movie. Now, you would hope that the gatekeepers of this, i.e. Kathleen Kennedy and all the others at Lucasfilm, would...
Pablo Hidalgo and, or Dave Filoni and all those
turn
guys.
it over to Filoni and even Favreau, man.
Yeah.
I mean, get some people that really know the universe, know what George would want and would do. Even when they were talking at the Mandalorian panel, it was kind of like Favreau was saying, I got to talk to Lucas himself about it. And, he gave me this whole thing on storytelling and everything like that. And
yeah, and that's the thing, too. Like, even when you bring up a good point with Favreau is that, like, even the Mandalorian, for example, like, he had been working on that thing for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, that's been my biggest issue. And we talked about this, before, but it's like plan. And I think that's just the biggest thing that's hurt Star Wars. And this is why the Marvel universe has succeeded so well, is because they literally had everything thought out. They knew exactly where they were going. And we've said this before, that once Star Wars, and I think they get it now because they're starting to see, and especially with them being so close to Marvel.
Well, I think
they kind of like,
the problem is I think the reason why they did what they did was because they were so in a rush to get Star Wars movies out there.
Yeah.
We bought the franchise. Now we want to start pumping these movies out because everybody's just waiting for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it started out all right. I mean, Force Awakens and Rogue One were met with pretty good responses.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. I mean, like, because, like I say, Force Awakens, Rogue One, boom, out the gate. We're good. And it's like, okay, Star Wars is back and it's rocking and rolling. And then you hit Last Jedi, you're like, uh-oh. And then Solo.
Well, the thing that's funny about Solo, Solo, I don't think, because everybody, that sees it goes, you know what? I mean, it was good. It was entertaining. It just wasn't
needed.
It wasn't necessary. It wasn't something that people necessarily wanted, and I think that's what kept them away, And it's like,
but then the marketing of it was just...
Well, yeah, that was what marketing?
You're right, exactly.
So yeah, that's pretty much it. And I mean, I think that that's the problem, is that people have to understand there is a trade-off. Number one, they need a plan. Number two, you just have to understand that part of the thing of taking Star Wars away from Lucas is you keep expecting Lucas versions of Star Wars now.
Yeah.
Well, this doesn't feel like Star Wars. Well, no kidding, it doesn't feel like Star Wars. You don't have George Lucas overseeing this stuff.
Right. It's like taking like Apple from Steve Jobs or something.
Yeah.
It's just like...
and then just getting a bunch of the creative team or whatever, and then just expect it to... I mean, it's not that it can't do it, but you have to understand that these people are going to try to, do like a replication of what Lucas did. They're not him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I think that sometimes the fans go a little far. I don't think that it's... I mean, look, we all know that the Star Wars template is out there. Yeah. And talented directors and writers and everything can follow that. It's not that you absolutely need Lucas, but you have to understand. Because, hey, look, Lucas himself had some really weird ideas for episodes 7, 8, and 9.
Yeah.
Like, really weird
Remember
ideas.
the jetpacks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, that was it was a midi-chlorian thing where he was going to get even more into them. And it was going to be this, like, really bizarre scientific thing.
Yeah, he's trying to make it almost like Star Trek. You're trying to bring too much science into a science fantasy thing,
it's like,
and it doesn't work that way.
And he just had some really weird ideas. Now, some of them were really cool. And actually, some of them they sort of used. They changed it and modified it a little bit. But, like, for instance, the whole handling of Luke. I mean, Lucas was going to go there, too. So you can't completely blame Rian Johnson for all this stuff. But needless to say that I think that we can both agree, once again, this is kind of a sad little duel of the fates, but I think we both agree that Rise of Skywalker is the one that really needs to succeed the most. And then the true answer is they both do.
They both do, yeah.
I think they both do. So what about you guys? We've given you guys we've actually said some pretty controversial things in this one.
Yeah.
Gotten a little bit,
down and dark with it.
Yeah. Let us know at Head to Head SW on Twitter or Facebook and, Instagram. Email us, Star Wars at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Check out our website. Check out, YouTube channel, Eric Vansel Media. You can see all the Star Wars content there, and maybe we'll make some more for you guys. But let us know. What do you guys think is the most important? Which one out of the two, if you had to pick one,
right?
Which one has to succeed in order to protect the franchise? All right, well, what do we got next?
Next we have From a Certain Point of View.
Oh, this is going to be good because speaking of, this is a interesting little topic we have because this could actually help the Rise of Skywalker succeed quite well.
Indeed, indeed.
So what's the topic?
The return of Emperor Palpatine.
Say it again.
Yes.
The return of Emperor Palpatine.
He's back.
Yeah, he seems to be.
So, I remember, you were a big fan of him coming back, actually. And I remember at one point I wasn't too thrilled on it. I'm like, well, I wanted somebody
funny because I think we actually discussed this on one of our podcasts.
Yeah, and
one of the earlier episodes.
Yeah, and I recall like I wasn't I didn't necessarily hate the idea.
No, but you weren't quite on board.
Yeah, I wasn't like, okay, this again. Because but
you were in the recruitment office, but you weren't ready to sign the paperwork. Let's put it that way.
Exactly. But I will say though, like as I was watching, the trailer on Friday, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm seeing all the stuff, the Rey flip, and then Kylo running through the forest, hacking down people, and then of course you hear that line of Luke's like, no one's ever really gone. And I'm thinking I'm going to hear like, well, first of all, I didn't think I was going to hear anything, but if I were to surmise to hear anything, I was going to think of like Obi-Wan Kenobi or Yoda or something like that, or Qui-Gon or something, something crazy to that effect, like, whoa. But to actually hear Palpatine's laugh, and I was just like, whoa. And then I was like, okay.
I know that laugh.
Yeah, it's like, okay, that was crazy. And then, like I said, once they brought the lights back up and Ian comes out and then he says, roll it again, I'm like, no way. Like, he's actually back. So now I kind of started getting on board because I started thinking about like, all right, well, if he's back, what does that really mean? And it's like, how is he really going to, and I had to really think back to his character of going to episode 1. He's that Phantom Menace. He's that guy that's in the background. And it's like, I see how JJ could tie this together a little bit more clearly now, because like I said, with him being that Phantom, he's that guy that sits in the background and he kind of just waits. And it's funny because you brought up on the last podcast, the Cobra Kai trailer.
Right.
And in that trailer, Martin Cove was talking about that hibernation of the snake type thing, and that's Palpatine. That's exactly how Palpatine is. He's like that guy who's going to sit in the back. He's going to wait to see what happens, kind of construct some things behind the scenes, and then he'll strike. And now he's found his way to come back. How, we don't know. I'm just excited. And then the big question for me is, are these guys even ready for Palpatine?
Well, there's a lot of things, too, that you can... First of all, going back to something that you said when, the thing goes to black and, you weren't sure what to expect or whatever, and then you hear the laugh.
Mm-hmm.
After Luke says no one's ever really gone, and he thought, well, we're going to see Obi-Wan or something. I honestly thought that what was going to happen was it was going to fade back up, and you'd see Luke in a scene. Because that would have made sense, given that, he's freshly gone, and it's kind of like, hey...
I'm not really
gone. But then, then you hear the Palpatine laughter and you're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's something that I've actually said for a long time. I've said it. I'll take credit for it.
Yes.
I've said it for at least a year and a half, that it would make perfect sense to bring him back. And I keep going back to the key scene in Revenge of the Sith, where he's talking about that his master not just learned how to cheat death and all that other stuff, he learned how to create life. And he taught it to his apprentice, and that was unfortunate because the apprentice killed him. So Palpatine, and then, of course, it was canonized that Palpatine's the one that created Anakin in Shmi's womb. So it's like he probably created Rey. It's kind of like one of those things where the whole tie-in with Darth Plagueis, the whole idea that he could do that, the contingency plan that you read about in the Aftermath trilogy.
Yeah, on Jakku, yeah.
Yeah, all these things. And it would make sense, like, are you going to bring somebody new on the last movie? And you can't really, what would actually make sense for the whole story? It's like you said, right from episode 1, he had this whole plan. Yeah. Everything was by design. And, okay, he was thrown down a shaft, but there's... And the thing that always struck me was how that big blue, flash came, and it was like... Then they started talking about... Now, of course, in the expanded universe, it was... there were several clones, and that his spirit or essence or whatever would actually just inhabit a new body.
Right.
And they dealt with that a little bit in some of the new canon novels. Not quite the same way. Like, it wasn't quite as Frankenstein, cheesy, whatever. But, I mean, he obviously had some contingency plans. He had an overall thing that was going. He had a secret base in the unknown regions. He's got a lot of things going on. It's not beyond the realm of possibility from a storyline point of view for Palpatine to come back.
Yeah.
It just isn't. In fact, it makes more sense than just about anything else.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's like, well, okay, what else are you really going to do? Because, like, okay, Snoke is gone, so either you're going to have to find a way to bring him back, or Kylo, he's going to be the ultimate bad guy, but he has to become, like, super powerful all of a sudden within a year. And then it's kind of like, all right, well, what's the big thing? And, you got to end it on a high note. Yeah. So Palpatine coming back, and let's just say his interest is in Kylo to get him ready to become a Sith Lord, or maybe he's coming back for Rey, and that's his plan. And he needs Kylo to do it. I don't know. I mean, we just don't know what his plan is.
Well, and the other thing, too, is that, you brought up a good point, too. It's like, are they really ready for this?
Yeah. And
because you gotta figure that how powerful is a resurrected Palpatine?
That's what I'm saying.
It's kind of like he was pretty powerful when he was just a normal guy. Obviously, you got to bring Luke back to deal with this.
And hopefully, like Luke actually warns her, unlike Yoda and Obi-Wan. They told Luke not to underestimate the Emperor, but that's it. They didn't tell him about, like, okay, this guy is like, no, you think Vader's bad. No, this guy, especially Yoda, it's just like Yoda went ahead up with him. Obi-Wan just kind of figured, but Yoda actually went head up with the Emperor. And so you think he would at least be the one like, look, man, we need to talk. And
well, especially,
really
he's being sent out. It's like as soon as Luke went out prematurely, too, you would have thought that they would have looked at each other and went like, well, maybe we better try to get Leia over here just kind of as a backup or something.
Yeah, let's start training her now.
Yeah, because, I mean, well, you do have to look at it from the standpoint, though, that Yoda was weakening his powers. Everybody sometimes overlooks the fact that something that Lucas had confirmed, that during the prequel era, Palpatine was diminishing the powers of the light side and weakening the Jedi. And then what ended up happening was, thanks to Dagobah and it just being this massive life force, Yoda was able to tap into that and then use the light side to diminish the powers of the dark side, which is, you get in-universe evidence of this when Vader's like, oh, hey, my son's down there. And,
he's like, yeah, strange. I have not.
Yeah, strange. I haven't sensed it. It's like, well, that's your first clue. And that's kind of Palpatine going, well, yeah, it's kind of weird that I didn't sense that, though. And Vader, of course, senses it because of the familial bond. But, Palpatine not having that link would have to rely solely on the dark side. Yeah. So it's like, I wonder why I didn't sense that. So, yeah, you do have to look at that, too. And then...
I don't know if that made him nervous.
Well...
I mean, he was kind of arrogant, too, so it's probably did. He probably like, But...
Yeah, I think he just... It's the way he played the scene. It was almost kind of like, oh, it's kind of funny that I didn't, but all right.
Yeah.
Go for it. There's nothing else to do. We're just really up here chilling, waiting for the destruction of the rebellion. So
I want you to bring him before me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, just go down and get him. I don't care if I sensed him. Just go get him. And that's the idea. It's like he is so arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
But what's going to be really interesting is to see, well, what was his plan? And now it's unfolding. And it's kind of like you can almost envision a scene where Palpatine faces Luke again. It's like, you thought you had the upper hand. You thought that you got rid of me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, Luke could fire back like, yeah, look, the dude you went against back then just knew the Force for like 10 minutes. I'm a lot more powerful now.
Yeah. I mean, but the other thing, too, about that is, Palpatine being who he is and as strong as he is, but I think that these kids aren't really going to be a match for him.
Oh, no way.
Because if you really think about it, like, they haven't really...
Well, we don't know what Rey, though. We don't know what she's read in the Jedi texts.
Yeah, but like, reading, it's almost kind of like...
Yeah, but think about Luke. Luke didn't really... I mean, what training did he really have between episodes 4 and 6?
Between 4 and 6?
Yeah.
Well, at least he had a lot with Yoda. I mean, he actually had a physical master there with him.
Well, and I mean, Luke did train her a little bit, and she was more prodigious with the Force than Luke.
And that's the thing.
She was doing like way more. That was actually one of the things that people always had an issue with in The Force Awakens. Is like, well, how's this chick able to do all this stuff?
Well, I mean, I get like, okay, the dark side is rising, so the light has to kind of compensate for it. And so I get that's why she's kind of like more in tune and things kind of happen. But what I mean is just more so of like all the characters, you know what I mean? Like, you're looking at like everybody really hasn't developed yet. Like, for example, New Hope. Okay, Han, he's kind of like, I'm not really trying to get involved, but he was already a good pilot.
Mm-hmm. But you could say that about Poe.
You could say that about Poe too. Yeah, but it's kind of like, all right, right at the very end of Last Jedi, did Poe start to realize, like, okay, Luke's trying to tell us something. He doesn't want...
Well, it's a leadership thing. It's sort of like Han had to learn to not be so selfish and to realize that there was more at stake than just his own skin.
Right.
And Poe had to learn that, sometimes being a leader means stepping back
or not being the hero all the time.
And assessing the situation and not being the guy in the front lines.
Yeah.
It's the same. That's a wash. You can't say that Han's more prepared than Poe or vice versa.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that their evolution as far as like leading and just like Finn's just figuring out who he is by this movie. You see what I'm saying? I just think like they're going to be the ones who are going against the Emperor. Like they're just learning themselves.
Mm.
You know, and that's what I'm going with. It's just like,
but don't forget, in the original trilogy, it was only Luke that really went against the Emperor.
Well, true, but
the other guys didn't. Han never even saw him. Well,
true, but I mean, I guess I'm thinking like, okay, for somebody as powerful as Palpatine, I don't know. It just, I mean, I know it's kind of shady.
It's going to come down to a Rey, Luke, Kylo. It's going to be the same as it was before. It's like, you're not going to have Finn going up against Palpatine. That's probably not even going to happen. You know, it's probably going to mirror somewhat. The Force users are going to
stick to each other.
Yeah, pretty much,
and
because it's their story arc. You know, it's going to be like a separate thing, right? So, like, for instance, Luke was on Cloud City at the same time that Leia, Chewbacca, and all them were. Mm-hmm. They're in the same facility, but they had completely different story arcs.
True.
And that's probably going to be a very similar thing.
True.
You know, because otherwise, I mean, it's really going to be interesting, though, because I'm wondering what the role's going to be between Rey and Kylo with Palpatine and then Luke, because you got to reunite Luke and Palpatine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, that would almost, if they didn't, it would almost be as bad, or maybe as bad, as not reuniting Luke and Han. That was the one thing that was like, they had just had one scene together, kind of like how Leia and Luke did.
Yeah.
You know, that would have been cool.
Or even Leia and Han.
Yeah. Like that's a good example.
I mean, I wish all three I wish they all shared a moment together.
Yeah, if they had all shared a moment to where they could be on screen together, that would have been really satisfying. Yeah. But again, I get it. Story-wise, that's a fan service thing.
Yeah.
But my whole thing is that I think that story-wise, you almost, I mean, like you said, unless Rey somehow, either through the Jedi text plus the training plus just, because, you know, I've often said that don't underestimate those Jedi texts. I mean, that's knowledge that Luke spent a long time accumulating, and that's part of probably why he grew to be so powerful. I mean, she just has more, you know, pretty much at her disposal than any other Jedi, really.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, like, you know, that's not something you just hand out to Padawans and they're, you know.
Well, here's the other thing, too, and I just thought about this. You know, they're playing like, okay, these are the sacred Jedi texts, and maybe they're the originals, but it's like, you had that whole stupid library on the temple that Jocasta knew was overseeing. It's like, well, what all, you telling me that what's contained in these little books is somehow like...
Well, you got to remember that, you know, the Jedi, yes, they had to study the Force and everything like that, and that was part of the thing. But, you know, they still had to learn politics. They had to learn the different worlds, different customs of different planets. I mean,
maybe those
it was like
books
school.
Were like the ancient text or whatever.
Yeah, those like the ancient Jedi texts as far as like Force
stuff.
But like everything else is kind of like your public library.
Like History 101 and
like,
all that with these like other chips. But I'm just saying that, you know.
I get your point though. It's like, they have like this whole catalog. But that's why he went to, like, they got planets in there. You know, you got to, I mean, it's kind of like, it's funny because even we joke about it when we watch Star Trek a lot. You know, it's like, okay, you landed on some planet. You don't want to say something like Picard had to learn the language because he didn't want to be offensive to them. So, you know, there's certain diplomacy things that you have to do because they're ambassadors. So,
well, and the other difference between Star Trek and Star Wars generally, too, is that with Star Trek, the whole premise is that they're explorers.
Right.
So I have no idea what they're... You and I make the joke all the time that it's like, you know, if it was like anybody from Earth, and all of a sudden a screen pops on
like
and
a
it's
blob.
crazy. You'd be like, I mean, but no matter what these guys see, they're always like, well, hello, Ithtar. I mean, we're from the United Federation of Planets, something like that. It's kind of like, really, dude? That's not really going to be your first reaction when you see this hideous thing in front of you on a screen. But with Star Wars, though, it's almost more like they're not so much exploring as it's kind of like the universe has been defined.
Yeah.
And there's just different areas.
Right.
And it's like, and they would have to know, like you said, maybe different customs and
how to
how to deal with that. But
yeah, with Palpatine though coming back, I just really feel it's going to be interesting, and I think this is where we're going to see like the bulk of the Force powers. Like when we said we want to see new Force powers, I think this is where it's going to happen.
Yeah,
like with Palpatine and Rey, I think Rey is going to have to break out some stuff just to contend with Palpatine.
Well, the other thing that I wonder too is like, how's he ultimately going to be vanquished now? That's
what I'm saying. Like, because if he can just keep depositing his spirit everywhere, I mean, like, how many of these things does he have? And then,
well, there's that. But let's just say they don't go with that. That it's kind of a one and done kind of thing, or because if you think about it, when he was thrown down that shaft.
Mm-hmm.
He could have slowed himself down, very similar to the way he did in the Robot Chicken thing when he was pondering his life, right? But, but I mean, he could. There were conceivable ways that he could have more or less survived, or at least prepared himself to resurrect.
Honestly, I mean, to me, this would be the best, in my opinion, the best way to do it. Is that like, okay, you have some sort of contingency plan that like, all right, like I said, we've heard about these, Force or dark witches and all this stuff where they got spells and where you can do all this stuff. Okay. He might have something that's just like, okay, or there's a spell that he did where it's like, okay, if I die, my spirit automatically transfers to this being or this entity or whatever the heck it is. And it's just like, okay, so he's not necessarily worried about death because, okay, he knows that if he dies physically, he'll be back, and then now he'll just
But it's like you said, it's like you would think that if he had a contingency for one time, he would want to keep that going.
Yeah, but I think his whole thing is more so or less that no one will be powerful enough to do it. Because, and that's the thing, I don't think he ever thought that anyone would be that powerful because once, and that, that was the whole point of the purge.
Well, no, he did, because actually the whole aftermath thing, that whole contingency plan was based on if Vader killed him, what he did was he had this whole trick, this whole thing to lead the entire Empire to Jakku. And then it would blow up. The planet would blow up, and it would actually wipe out the entire Empire. Because if Vader had killed him, he didn't want Vader to benefit from the Empire that he built.
Mm-hmm.
That was the whole thing behind it. But the contingency was there in case Vader actually killed him.
Mm.
So he knew that somebody would be powerful enough. Granted, it would only be Vader that he would be worried about.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of like...
And rightfully so, because Vader did technically kill him.
Well, yeah. I mean, it just didn't quite happen on his timeline.
Yeah. Or Vader's.
Yeah, and he was a little surprised. I mean, it was funny because if you actually rewatch that whole ending scene of Return of the Jedi, it didn't even occur to him that Vader would do anything.
Mm-mm. He wasn't... I mean, it was just like he was so focused on torturing Luke.
And he just figured that Vader was his forever, that there was no way that Vader would ever turn against him. I mean, he kept saying that throughout the whole duel anyway. It's like, oh, you think you could turn? He's never going to turn. In fact, I think that's part of what got Vader to be like, you know what, man?
Well, I mean, I think it's just eventually he's lost it. He's figured this is his one chance to actually do something. And I think that was the cool thing about the prequels is that you get to see Vader's losses, or Anakin's losses, I should say.
Yeah.
So you see him lose Shmi, and how he had to deal. He wasn't there for that. He kills his wife. He wasn't there for that. And then he thought that he killed his children too. So he felt like he lost it all. So of course now he's at the point where he's got the one thing that's like him, that's still surviving, that's the actual good that he remembers. And it's like, okay, do I let that die? Or is this the moment where it's like, okay, this is the one time in life I could actually do something?
Well, and I think the thing that made that scene so, just heart-wrenching is the fact that Vader actually sacrificed himself.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that was so mind-blowing about that moment, is that Vader knew it was going to kill him. And yet he had enough good and enough love in him to actually sacrifice himself.
Yeah, and he did it with one arm because, think about with one hand.
Hey man, it's that whole Skywalker amputee thing going.
I know.
It's.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he's probably like, oh, not again. But and that was the thing. Like, he just had this whole battle with his son, and then his son hacks his hand off. Almost like as retribution in a way. And then, now his son is like on the floor getting fried, and he's probably like, I should let him fry, but on the other hand, it's like, man, that is my son, and it's like fatherhood and all that kind of eventually kicked in for him. But I will say, like, the moment though is just kind of like, and that's why I love John Williams' music, is like how the music is building while Vader's looking at Luke, and then he's looking at the Emperor, and he's looking back. He keeps like trying to and then he eventually, you hear that drum roll, and then he eventually picks up the Emperor, and you're just like, whoa. And the Emperor's still shooting lightning. He didn't turn that thing off or nothing, man. He's actually kind of frying himself again. So it's just like, wow. That's some commitment to the dark side, man. When you willing to fry yourself.
Well, the thing is, I think he didn't stop shooting the lightning because he was actually trying to hit Vader.
He's probably trying to let me down,
which he did. That's what ended up shorting out the
respirator,
the whole respirator, and everything else. I always thought it was weird that Vader was so insistent that now he's going to die or whatever. It's kind of like, well, it seems like somebody could have fixed that pretty easily.
Well, Vader,
granted, once he took the mask off, and is like, but you'll die. Well, nothing can prevent that now. It's like, well, not really, dude. We got medical droids, and granted, they might not necessarily be in a line to rush to help him.
Well, you got to think about it too, man. You got the whole Death Star about to blow up that they're on. And then on top of that, like...
Well, I think Vader realized he was slowing Luke down. Because remember, Luke was actually dragging Vader on the floor, trying to get him to a ship.
Yeah. And then on top of that, too, is still like, which is hilarious because, like, all the people who were serving Vader,
oh, yeah,
they weren't even like, stopping to help.
Nope.
So I'm out of here. But, the whole thing is like, okay, I think Vader sustained himself. He sustained so many injuries from that blast of lightning because not only did it short out the respirator, but it physically took a toll on him. And it's like, okay, especially after
Vader
dueling
was
with
not
Luke.
Young anymore.
Yeah,
either.
he wasn't young. He just got finished his whole duel with Luke where he was already probably tired from anyway. And then he gets blasted with all this lightning. He can't breathe.
Didn't have a good day.
Yeah, man. It's just like...
But you know what? There was a part of me, though, honestly, that I was sort of bummed when I saw it as a kid because I'm like, I really wanted to see a scene where Luke got him on the shuttle and then flew him down, with Han, Leia, and all them.
And brought him in?
Yeah, and brought him in. Kind of just like how that would have been, because now you have a redeemed Anakin who's like, it's almost like Darth Vader as a good guy would have been a very cool premise.
He has a white suit now. Mine looks like a snowtrooper. Well, no, it would be hilarious. Like, they're all like singing and rejoicing and doing a little nub nub song. And then like the record scratches because they see Vader like,
Yeah, exactly.
what's going on? Okay. Who invited Vader?
Your droid. He'll have to leave. We don't serve his kind here.
Like, please tell me this dude is dead.
Well, and it's kind of funny too, because, even though Vader was redeemed and the immediate family and everybody knew it, it was kind of like the galaxy still, as we saw in Bloodline, It's like as soon as they found out that Leia was his daughter, it's like,
Yeah, the galaxy couldn't forgive that because... Yeah, man, like he's killed younglings. I mean, he did the whole Jedi Purge, and then the amount of stuff that the Empire, crap, they blew up Alderaan.
Well, there's that, but you also had to look at a lot of his adventures too, like in Lords of the Sith, how, he actually made, I forgot what that creature was, but it was like this whole tribe or species of creatures, and they actually helped him out, and Vader killed him anyway. It's like they did a lot of atrocious things.
Yeah.
As the Empire, and it's like, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, he did kill the Emperor, but still.
Yeah.
But needless to say, I think that we're really looking forward to seeing how they handle the Emperor's return and how they handle his death.
Yeah,
I think we can agree that he's got to die in this.
Yeah, because otherwise, then you got to make another movie.
Yeah, or, well, you can leave it open for more, but it just wouldn't make any sense because...
Yeah, if you're going to close this whole thing...
Yeah, you're closing the saga.
You got to.
And he's the bad guy of the saga, so you have to do it. So let us know what you guys think. What do you guys think of the return of Emperor Palpatine? Do you think it was a cheap move? Do you think it was necessary to the story? What do you want to say to us about it? Give us your thoughts at head-to-head-SW. Hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, comment in the YouTube version of this. All kinds of opportunities to contact us, actually. All right. Well, I guess it's my turn.
Your turn.
It's my turn. Time for one of my favorite segments. And this is where we answer your questions and clear your mind. All right. Who do we got first on our Clear Your Mind segment?
We have Carla Samuels. Her question is, was Kylo fighting the Knights of Ren in the Rise of Skywalker trailer?
I don't think so. In fact, they're an alien race that I actually read the name of them because they actually interviewed an actor who played one of them. But that was not, to my knowledge, it looked like it was those aliens. They actually showed a picture of them and everything. Mm-hmm. And I think that was what he was fighting.
Okay.
In the trailer. Because at first, that's what I think everybody thought.
Yeah, you could kind of see where they would get that from.
Yeah, absolutely.
In that brief clip, but you could kind of see,
Well, and I think that they do have to... That's another thing that has to happen in 9. And I think it will, because it was JJ's creation, and he's the one in charge. They got to do something with this Knights of Ren thing.
Yeah.
They brought that up, and it was such a important, integral part of Kylo Ren's story and everything, and then all of a sudden, you just get nothing. Nothing in The Last Jedi.
Right.
I don't even think they mentioned them.
Nope, didn't call them, nothing.
No, and I remember even in The Last Jedi trailer, I thought the Praetorian Guards were the Knights of Ren.
Mm-hmm.
And then found out they were nothing more than a modified version of the Royal Guard. So that was kind of interesting. But no... he's not fighting the Knights of Ren in that trailer. Now, that's not to say that he doesn't fight the Knights of Ren.
True. He might. Or
that the Knights of Ren fight with him against somebody else, like maybe Mr. Palpatine.
Right.
Who knows? We'll just have to find out.
Oh, that would be awesome. If, like, Kylo tries to grab the Knights of Ren to take out Palpatine because he wants to be the ultimate, to be a Sith Lord. He knows he has to...
Well, what would actually be interesting to me is if, it's almost like in order to be a true Jedi Knight, Luke had to face Vader.
Mm-hmm. And
it's sort of like, even though there is the rule of two, so if there's just Palpatine and Kylo, he could probably still do it. But if he somehow felt like he had to defeat Palpatine to become the ultimate Sith Lord, just to see those two interact.
Oh, yeah.
Would actually be kind of cool.
It would be
hilarious. Because he's so unhinged.
Yeah.
He's so full of rage. And just to see like how Palpatine would handle him and either try
you know he would shut him down.
Oh, completely. I mean, as powerful as Kylo is, there's just no way. Not even close.
Right.
And that's why I'm looking forward to seeing what Luke and a duel between Luke and Palpatine would be very interesting.
Indeed.
So hopefully we get that.
All right. And the next question comes from Steve Hatcher. His question is, The Mandalorian looks like an awesome ride. Will we see more gritty Rogue One style shows on Disney Plus? Perhaps a R-rated Star Wars series?
I honestly think that we will see more gritty Rogue One style shows. Mostly because if you look at what we're going to get, right? We could see that The Mandalorian obviously is that way.
Mm-hmm.
The Cassian Andor series almost has to be that way.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature of his character and what we saw him do in Rogue One. So, I think that, but I don't necessarily think that, I don't think we'll ever get an R-rated series.
No, I mean, I agree.
First of all, it's Disney Plus.
Yeah, I was about to say it's Disney Plus. That just tells you right there, like Disney is not going to do R-rated.
Yeah, this isn't Netflix or HBO or Showtime or anything like that. So, secondly, I don't necessarily think that you have to do that because they've shown us, starting actually with Revenge of the Sith, but certainly with Rogue One.
Rogue One was was the big one because especially like that whole scene where like Cassian kind of shoots the informant, like that
and
was just like,
stuff that we already know about the Mandalorian. I mean, I think that it's safe to say that you can get a gritty adult themed Star Wars movie or TV series without it necessarily being an R-rated movie.
And you gotta understand, Star Wars were meant for it's meant for the younger generation.
Yeah. But even if you go off of that, think of what makes a movie R-rated. It's either nudity, language or violence. You don't need any of that in Star Wars.
Nope. We were just fine with Leia and her little bikini on.
Exactly.
The Jedi.
You could do like PG-13 stuff.
Yeah.
It still could be the darkest of the dark, and it could still be gritty, and it could still be adult themed. You don't necessarily need to push the envelope.
Yeah.
With any of that. It's just unnecessary.
Yeah, and it really does kill Star Wars when you start doing stuff like that.
If you start doing stuff like that, exactly. It really ruins the purity of the storytelling and the magic.
Yeah.
Because that's what Star Wars is. It's a magical thing. It's a fantasy thing. It's an escape. It deals with broad themes of good and evil. And if you get too dark or too gritty...
Yeah, it's not The Sopranos, man.
Right. Now, I will say that there's certain things that they could do even within the PG-13. Like, there was one premise that somebody brought up. It was like a director or somebody that said, wouldn't it be interesting to make a Star Wars horror movie? Like a horror film set in the Star Wars universe. There is precedence for that in not the new canon, but Legends. I forgot what the novel was, but it kind of had a whole horror vibe going.
Well, I'll tell you what had a whole horror vibe was in Rogue One, man, when Vader showed up, man. He was like Michael Myers, man.
Yeah. But I mean, and the thing is, though, and I was just going to say that you don't necessarily need to make it like a slasher type horror film either. It could be, very much like a gothic or atmospheric or
the Clone Wars with those when they were on Dathomir and with those spirits and everything. I mean, that was kind of for a cartoon. That was kind of heavy.
And you could have like some unseen force killing people and, nobody knows who it is. And, it would just be, I don't think you need, some dude in a hockey mask and a lightsaber going around.
Right. I mean, but even like
killing bikini clad slave girls from Jabba's palace or something.
Look, Twi'leks.
Yeah. Exactly. Teenage Twi'leks. Boy, are we nerdy.
But yeah, I mean, the Revenge of the Sith, though, that was PG-13.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was the first one.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like, so that was PG-13, and it's just because of that Anakin scene.
Yeah, and I mean, it's that's what I'm saying. You can have adult themes, you can have darkness, you can have grittiness, you can have all that stuff. And we've seen evidence of that already. It doesn't necessarily have to be the things that would push it to an R rating. It just doesn't have to.
Yeah, it doesn't.
But I do think that we're going to see more of those, because I think that they want to definitely make shows that are, while it still appeals to, you know, younger generations and stuff like that, and it has like a moral of the story kind of thing, and it's definitely like teaching kids some things, you know, they could do. So like what they did with Resistance, right? They made more of a real kids, like adults can enjoy it, but it's really geared towards kids. And now they can have movies or TV series or whatever that are geared towards adults. Absolutely. Like The Mandalorian. It's totally geared towards adults. You know, that's the beauty of Star Wars. You can make something for everybody. And hopefully they do. So thanks, Steve, for that question. That was a good one. I think that's going to do it for our show this week.
Yes, sir, Manfred.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this week's show. You know, remember, we'll leave some links in the show notes for some products that you can buy through those links that will help support our show. And we also want you guys definitely to hit us up on any of the topics we talked about today. Hit us up on Twitter and Facebook at HeadToHeadSW. Subscribe to the Eric Vansel Media channel on YouTube, where you will find all the head-to-head Star Wars content. Let us know what shows you guys want us to do. If you guys have any topic ideas of things you want us to discuss, you know, be sure to do that. We would love to hear from you guys. Email us at Star Wars at headtoheadswpodcast.com. And hopefully we can start getting some really good discussions going. Star Wars is in full swing now.
Yep, celebration's over.
Yep, we are in post-celebration mode. So we got a lot to talk about in future shows, guys. So, you know, keep it coming. We love your Facebook comments. We love to engage with you guys. And that'll do it for us this week. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.